Okay, this is my audience. Hey. I'm going to read my speech about why same-sex marriage should be allowed. Can we close the door? Yeah. In our world, in our country, in our community, there are and always will be those who are different. People of different interests, styles, religions, colors, and socioeconomic groups. While many humans fear that which is different than them, under the American Constitution, all of these people's rights are protected. They are all equal citizens, given the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. While our world, America in particular, has made great strides in social justice, I want to tell you that our journey is certainly incomplete. Those among us with different sexual orientations are still discriminated against, not only socially but by American and state laws. Homosexual couples are not told that they should not marry, but are forbidden to participate in the social communion so favored in family and community life. Why are people, caring people, normal people, forbidden this innate right of marriage? They should not be, and that is what I'm here to talk to you about today. Marriage is one of the fundamental building blocks of our neighborhoods, communities, and nation. At its best, it is a stable bond between two individuals who work to create a loving household and a social and economic partnership. As a country, we encourage loving couples to marry because it bolsters a sense of responsibility and commitment to people and communities beyond themselves. It transforms two individuals into one union and establishes a formal investment in the well-being of society. The fact that gay couples want to share in this essential social institution should be celebrated and not resented. On another level, marriage between Americans is a civil bond and as well as, in some but hardly all cases, a religious event. It is a relationship recognized by governments as providing a privileged and respected status, entitled to the state's support and benefits. The California Supreme Court described marriage as a union unreservedly approved and favored by the community. Once recognized by the state, married couples are entitled to special benefits, and our Constitution states that withholding this status requires powerful justifications that may not be arbitrarily denied. So, what then are these powerful justifications to deny homosexuals and not rapists, murderers, mentally deficient people, and convicts currently serving jail time the right to marry? The most common opposer justification is tradition, both secular and religious. To me, however, as a Jew whose ancestors have felt severe persecution, I believe that just because something has been done a certain way does not mean it must always remain that way. If things in our country stayed the same, women would not have the right to vote, schools would be segregated, debtors' prisons would be rampant, and our president could be your slave. Thus, although we typically think of marriage as the bond between one man and one woman, as time goes on and homosexuals become mainstream, essential parts of our communities, that definition is no longer relevant. Times and society have changed, making the tradition argument no longer valid. It must have seemed even more extreme to change the tradition of having blacks as slaves and then making them full-fledged citizens. That tradition has been changed, and do any of us regret it? Change can be scary, but it is necessary, and it is time to make a not-so-small minority full-fledged members and citizens of our nation. As for religious tradition, it is clear and has been established through two Supreme Court cases that as a result of the separation of church and state, no matter what religious convictions are, they are to have no effect on legal ramifications. What churches, synagogues, and mosques accept is their own situation, but is not allowed to have any influence on law or politics. Our country cannot begin establishing rules and restrictions on people's basic rights based on the Old Testament and the Torah. Should non-kosher meat and non-baptized children be banned as well? Another argument that is often heard against same-sex marriage is that traditional marriage can improve the state through procreation, and that accepting marriages without the ability to bear children would diminish this core value. In simpler words, because same-sex couples physically cannot have children, they do not have the right to be married. To be completely honest, this argument has literally no standing. Preventing same-sex marriages does not make more heterosexual couples have more children, nor will gays marrying people of the same sex affect how many homosexual marry members of the opposite sex. Furthermore, when heterosexuals ask the state to get married, it is not a condition that they have children or even have the physical capabilities to have them. In fact, nearly 30% of all couples in the U.S. of child-rearing age have infertility problems. Furthermore, marriage of elderly and prison inmates with no desire to have children is permitted. Lastly, is it fair to strip people of their natural rights because of the state's desire to increase its population? Americans would never accept a constitutional ban on marriage if a country or state decided that it wanted to inhibit its procreation as China does. So why then would they be able to do the opposite? In what way do these marriages that prevent the birth of children in what ways do these marriages then prevent the birth of children or inhibit procreation? None. It's almost done, guys. It is interesting to note that some states, such as California, have begun to push boundaries and fight for equality now. Members of the gay community have been allowed to form domestic partnerships, which have many similar rights as married couples. Although a step in the right direction, if gays and lesbians are allowed to live together in relations sanctioned by the state, then does this argument over marriage even have real threshold? Is it just the title that is controversial? What I feel those who support these domestic partnerships, but not marriage of gays, do not see is that by withholding this title, our government is making gays and lesbians who already feel very different and often looked down upon by society that their relationships are less worthy, less legitimate, and thus undeserving of the title of marriage. By not permitting gay marriage, not only are you doing gays interested in marriage a disservice, but the entire gay community. Gays who try and force themselves into heterosexual marriages are 4 times more likely to divorce, and psychologists have reported that the number one cause of high school suicides is a feeling that one is different and will never belong. It is no wonder that suicide rates in gay teens are nearly twice as high as normal teens, when their own government does not even recognize them as equals enough to allow them to get married. We need to stop tolerating gays and start wholeheartedly accepting them. They are humans and should not be told every day how different they are. If you are just uncomfortable with the idea of gay marriage, then all I can tell you is to grow up. While you may be passively comforted by this ban, so many lives are actively hurt by it, and this leads me into my final argument. Many people believe that it is the right thing to do, but not the right time to do it. It is true that fewer than half the states have legalized gay marriage up to this day, and that if fully legalized by the Supreme Court, there would be many social reactions. However, if your civil rights were denied from you, would you wait for the country to be ready to get them? We celebrate Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks for not waiting for change. We have to be the champions of this new army for social justice for all. If you look at the past and the present, our position should be clear. Bicultural relationships used to be almost alien and even illegal, and there were legitimate social revolutions and rallies against the Beatles for growing out their hair. While we look back at these social reactions, they seem insane now. In under 100 years from now, we will look back as a country and do the same for this topic. Which side of history do you want to be on? This ban, this persecution cannot be tolerated. To make generous citizens feel like aliens in their own country is unacceptable. The time for tolerance dwindles and the time of acceptance begins. We are the ones we have been waiting for. It is time now. This is not a fight of homosexuals versus heterosexuals, Democrats versus Republicans, but discrimination versus equality. Which side will you be on? To me, this argument is so obvious. I would like to take this time to ask the audience if there are any objections to anything I said or arguments that I did not address. Thank you, guys.